Welcome to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast with Dr. Thomas Hemingway. Have you ever looked in the mirror and said to yourself, I thought I'd be healthier, in better shape, feel better both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and be further along in my life? If so, come on this journey with my dad as he explores all things health and wellness from a holistic medical perspective, even as a classically trained physician. He'll share integrative strategies to optimize health and inspire you to join the modern medicine movement.
Welcome to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast. Dr. Thomas Hemingway here. Super pumped, guys. Just looking out the window here. It's such a beautiful day in Hawaii. We're almost moving into the winter season. It was 64 degrees last night, which was awesome. It seems like this summer weather has been so long. We're coming up on November in 2 days, and it's been like 88 to 90 degrees with 90% humidity every stinking day in October, September, August. Until now, we had 2 nights of like 60-somethings, and it was awesome. I love it. So welcome to another episode of the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast. So grateful you guys are here. The reason I do this is for you, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you so much for subscribing. If you haven't already subscribed to my podcast in iTunes, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever, Google Podcasts, wherever you find it, please subscribe, and then you won't miss out on any new content. I typically release new shows every Monday, sometimes Tuesday, depending on how hectic the weekend was with work. I'm working a lot of weekends lately, and things are busier once again. I think we're still getting through, the pandemic. We're probably about to have a COVID-20 already. Flu season is upon us once again, coming into November. People are moving around. It's, people are doing stuff, for good and for bad. And, a lot of it's for good. They're getting up and going outside, which I love. That's my, one of my favorite vitamins, right? Vitamin N. For nature, getting outside and moving. My other favorite vitamin, vitamin M for movement. They're getting outside, they're hiking, they're doing all sorts of fun stuff, biking, all these outdoor activities that sometimes get them injured. And when that happens, I'm there for them. I'm there for you guys. I'm a full-time ER doctor and have been for almost 20 years. I've been over 20 years in medicine, and where I'm working currently, I've been there 15 years. And I love taking care of those that need my help, that are sick or injured. I love taking care of anybody and everybody who wants to improve their life, improve their health, improve just the X factor in their lives with all natural means, by diet and movement, exercise, getting our guts healthy, all these things, getting our minds, our bodies, our spirits, our just total persona healthy and well. That's my goal. And so thank you for coming on the journey. If you haven't already, drop me a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Please do so. In Apple Podcasts, it's the very end. Scroll down. You see the 5 stars. Hit the one farthest to the right. Click on that one, and then the little square that has the pencil coming out the top that you can click on to actually write a review. I love those. I so much appreciate. I love reading them each and every time. I read all of them. So drop me a review. Thanks for doing so in advance. Also subscribe. Also look me up on Facebook, Modern Medicine Movement Podcast. I have a free group that a lot of you guys are starting to join, which is awesome. It's the Modern Medicine Movement Health and Wellness group. It's free. I pretty much accept everybody universally. Sometimes it takes me a few days or so. I don't jump on that every single day, but I try to get you guys in soon so you can appreciate the content, the links to the podcast. I will be starting this week once again, a weekly live in that group, which I'm excited about this Friday. And hopefully every Friday, I'll try to get that going for you guys. I love to reach out and share, and I want to get back to doing this on a weekly basis. It's been a little crazy lately, and besides working full-time, I got a family of 8, which is awesome, but we're busy. We stay busy, as they say in Hawaii. We got lots going on with homeschool and my kids and their outdoor activities, sporting, and other things that they enjoy. They play the piano. I'm helping them do that because I play the piano too, which is amazing to share that with my kids. So working on that with them and doing what I love to do outside, surfing, biking, whatever it is, hiking. We stay busy. We keep busy, and it's awesome. So look forward to that. Modern Medicine Movement Health and Wellness Group on Facebook. I'm going to be doing a weekly live on Fridays. We'll go with that for now, see how that goes for you guys. If there's a better day, let me know. I'm just here to serve you, and I love to do this. I so appreciate your feedback. And so look me up there. You can look me up on the web as well, Modern Medicine Movement. I'm on just the regular web URL, Modern Medicine Movement Podcast. I'm on Google under the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast at gmail.com. You can send me messages or emails. I'm pretty old school. I love emails. And I think I pretty much got 100% track record, more or less, of responses to questions and things. I try to respond to you guys. So keep that going. Keep the feedback coming. Please share, like, as we say, with your family, your friends, your loved ones, anyone who's interested in optimal health. That's what we're all about. So please share. Love when you guys do that. We're getting thousands of downloads every week, which is amazing. We're coming up on, around 30 shows so far. So keep it going. It's awesome. I can't wait to just, soon we'll be, a couple of months, we'll be at a year on the show, which will be amazing. So keep the feedback coming. Keep sharing. Keep subscribing. Dropping reviews. Telling your friends and family. Because this content can change your life. It's changed mine many times over. And today's topic is no different. It's something that I'm passionate about because I've also suffered from the consequences of this illness, which are incredibly common. 1 in 5 Americans has this. It's according to the American Society, or I should say American College of Gastroenterology, more than 60 million Americans suffer this at least once a month. Can you guys think about, I'll give you a hint, it's a GI or gastrointestinal problem. And 60 million of us, there's roughly 300 million Americans, so 1 in 5 people suffer from this in the US of A, and I'm sure similar amounts worldwide. Have this once a month, and it's not fun. It's not fun at all. And I've had it myself, and it is heartburn, reflux esophagitis, GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, dyspepsia, whatever you want to call it. It's super common out there. I myself have had it. You guys probably have at some point as well. You're probably wondering what's the best treatment for it. Can we do it without traditional prescribed or over-the-counter medications? And the answer is a resounding yes, you can. Yes, you can. There are ways naturally to both treat this, heal this, change this, prevent this, so you don't have to deal with this wicked burning chest pain type abdominal pain right in the sort of pit that kind of can come up. You can get the sour taste in your mouth, that bitter, can cause all kinds of issues just symptomatically, like chronic cough. It can cause asthma, bronchitis, sinus problems, allergy type problems, mucus congestion, and chronic cough and asthma are often results of this problem. On an ongoing basis, it can wreak havoc on your intestinal tract from problems with your gut flora. There's just so many things chronically it can cause and contribute to inflammation and all sorts of issues. So you definitely want to not selfishly just get it gone and treat it and get it better, just to not have symptoms, because of course you'll live better and happier that way without these devastating, sometimes painful symptoms that keep you up at night or wake you up at night or whatever. But you also be healthier to get rid of this problem. You will absorb your nutrients better, and certain treatments that are out there, are not awesome. So we'll get into all of that. There's just so much to talk about. As I said, it's increasingly common. I mean, nearly 1 in 5 people will have this every single month. And I'm sure just a simple, how many people at some point in their lives have had this at least once. It's probably upwards of almost all of us, probably close to 100% of people will have this at some point in their lives, this heartburn, this dyspepsia, this reflux. So that's why I want to talk about it, because it's so common. And not only is it so common just sort of as at a baseline, let's just say, but often triggers of this and exacerbating factors can be not only dietary things, but also stress. The stress that we go through. And in recent months, with the pandemic and everything, stress levels are up. They're through the roof. I know this because I felt it. I've seen it in many of you and many people as well that come into my workplace, and a lot of things that are unanticipated, if you will, consequences of all the pandemic issues is lots and lots of stress. And so stress is definitely something that plays into heartburn, reflux, stomach ulcers. It's been shown in literally thousands of studies that it is something that plays into that. The sad thing is that these issues of heartburn and reflux are increasing. It's actually getting worse over time, where you'd think, gosh, we've got so many treatments for it, both medical and non-medical. Why would people be getting more of it? It seems like we should get a handle on this. And part of it is just all the stress that's going on. It's just been increasingly common. And it's, like I said, it's crazy. All of us probably get this every now and then. So for that reason alone, I want to help you. I want to help me. I want to help us be able to recognize it, be able to treat it, make it better, and to prevent it more than anything, because this is not fun. So let's just talk a little bit about kind of symptomatically what it is. And let's just, at the outset, a little bit of a disclaimer and caveat. Although I am a physician, I've been a practicing physician, doctor of medicine for, about 20 years now. I've treated thousands of patients. But what I'm saying here, this is my observations, my opinions, my review of the data and the literature. This is not medical advice for you. This is just informational. So take it for what it is. It's informational. Discuss your own personal treatment with your healthcare provider, and hopefully they will be well-versed in some of these things that I'll talk about. And if they aren't amenable to learning more and they're just not on the same page as you guys, consider looking for an alternative, provider that may be more on the same page with you if you want to do things more holistically and naturally, because they're out there. There's lots of providers out there that are indeed interested in that approach rather than the traditional, Band-Aid medicine approach, which is just throw a prescription at you approach, which unfortunately a lot of the physicians out there, that's how they were trained. I mean, it's a mainstay of how I was trained 20 plus years ago is, the Band-Aid medicine approach. You give them a prescription for this or for that, diagnose and adios with a prescription pad, right? Well, there's more that can be done both preventively as well as therapeutically with natural means. And we'll discuss all of those things. So first of all, let's just talk a little bit about what it is. What is this reflux thing? What is this heartburn thing? So in all of us, right, we have a mouth connected to a throat and esophagus, connected then to our stomach. And in our stomach, we have acid, hydrochloric acid. In fact, we have cells there that produce the stomach acid, which is actually, believe it or not, it's a good thing. We're supposed to have that. In fact, if you don't have enough stomach acid, you actually can have problems. You want to have stomach acids. They keep our natural balance, our microbiota, our microbiome, our flora sort of in a good level at bay. The bad ones, they keep them at bay, and it just helps with our overall diversity and to have good, healthy gut. We actually need to have stomach acid. If we don't, and if we take medicines or things that alter this to the point where we don't have enough stomach acid, then we get an overgrowth, a bacterial overgrowth of the pathogens or organisms there that we don't want, that cause us problems. So the right balance is crucial. Stomach acid is crucial. So when practitioners of typically the Western medicine approach just throw all these antacids, proton pump inhibitors, H2 blockers, all these medicines at you to drop the production of stomach acid, that's not necessarily a good thing. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So reflux happens when your stomach acid doesn't just stay where it's supposed to, which is in the stomach, right? To help start to digest the food. Sometimes it'll kind of reflux or leak upwards into the esophagus. That's why it's called gastroesophageal reflux disease. It's refluxing up. And the reasons that can happen is for anatomical consideration called a hiatal hernia, which is relatively common in the population, that basically a part of the stomach kind of goes upwards into the esophagus. So that normal sort of process to prevent stomach acid from going up, what's called the LES, the lower esophageal sphincter, is sort of a valve or a band of muscular tissue that kind of wraps around, that distal esophagus, so that it tightens that area so that the stomach acid doesn't kind of reflux back upwards. And that can be messed with if you have what's called a hiatal hernia, or if you have problems with your lower esophageal sphincter, the tone of which, it becomes less, contracted and kind of relaxes. This happens often naturally with hormonal issues, especially even natural stuff, right? You guys have heard that during pregnancy, due to all sorts of hormones in the body and increases of them, including things like oxytocin, relaxin, all these hormones that are great for, getting a mama ready for a baby and all that. Some of them actually relax that sphincter, their lower esophageal or LES, there between the esophagus and the stomach, and can cause reflux more easily. So in pregnancy, any of you ladies out there who have experienced reflux or heartburn during pregnancy, show of hands. I'm sure most all of you at some point had it. Super common in pregnancy. It's common in young people. It's common with dietary things, which we'll talk about. Things like caffeine can increase it. Alcohol, spicy foods can increase heartburn and things. But basically what's happening is that hydrochloric acid, which we want to be in our stomach, it's getting out of our stomach, getting into the esophagus, and even all the way up towards the mouth. We might taste a little, ooh, that was a little weird, bubbly, kind of sour taste. If we, eat a big meal and then we lie down to go to sleep right away, you might have that and go, ooh, that, I taste my dinner in my throat. Well, that's heartburn or reflux or GERD. And so we often have that painful, could be a burning sensation in the kind of pit of the stomach in the middle here called the epigastrium, could be up in the chest, could be even all the way up in the throat. We can also sometimes have this sour or acidic taste in the mouth. Like I said, chronic cough sometimes is from this. And typically, this is not what we want to be occurring, right? We want the acid to be not in our esophagus, not in our mouth, the decay in our teeth. We want the acid in our stomach, where it's supposed to be. And that's where, it's helping this food that we, ingest, that we swallow, to be broken down into smaller pieces and get digested with that hydrochloric acid. You actually need that so that once the stomach, the food passes from the stomach into the intestinal tract, initially the small intestine and the large intestine, it's in smaller morsels and more digestible pieces. And so this issue, when you have the stomach acids refluxing up, not only is it something potentially painful, but it's messing with the normal process. And so you want to be able to control that for your own selfish desire, so you don't feel that pain, which is pretty annoying. I mean, I had it one night in particular. I can remember a couple of years ago, I ate the exactly wrong thing late at night. I think there was some maybe celebratory event. We had a pizza or something, and then stupidly I laid down. It was late, and I laid down. An hour after eating a big meal of pizza, and guess what? I had this wicked chest pain. Oh my gosh! I thought I was having a heart attack. I mean, I knew I wasn't, but it was painful. But anyway, it can be super painful. And if you have anything super painful like that, just go get it checked out. I'm not saying, just guess what it is, because it may be heartburn, but it may not be. So get it checked out, especially if it's really painful. But some of the common causes of heartburn, and these are not as well known. And sometimes you can even get issues from not only, very rarely actually is it the overproduction of stomach acid, because that's seen pretty uncommonly. There was this syndrome I learned about 20 plus years ago in medical school called Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, where you actually produce way too much stomach acid. But this is a whole different process, a super rare event due to some pancreas cells that are messing with you here, and you just overproduce lots and lots of acid. And that's actually, interestingly enough, why heartburn medicine, specifically the proton pump inhibitors or PPIs, were originally designed. When I learned about them in medical school, they were not prescribed for any rinky-dink, occurrence of reflux or heartburn. They weren't vastly prescribed like they are today. They're prescribed like daily, for the first symptoms, and they have, unfortunately, lots of potential side effects. So they are problematic, and we'll get to that later. But interestingly, having not enough stomach acid is also problematic, and it can contribute to, you heard of this bacteria called H. pylori. It's all too often referred to as the problem child, right, of heartburn and stomach ulcers. And oh my gosh, if you have a H. pylori test, you should take 4 different antibiotics to get rid of it. Stat, What they don't tell you is that H. pylori in the appropriate amount is actually normal flora in the stomach, and it's normal to have some H. pylori. But if you have a bacterial overgrowth, as I mentioned at the outset, if you don't have enough stomach acid, which often can be a downstream effect of taking, different types of antacids, both prescription ones, over-the-counter ones, it can decrease the acidity of your stomach, and then you can have an overgrowth of things like H. pylori, which then can become problematic because, and rightly so, overproduction and too many of these H. pylori can lead to stomach ulcers, can lead to stomach cancers and things like that. So you don't want to have an overgrowth. That's not what you want. But having some is okay. It's part of the normal flora. But when it's too much, when you have a bacterial overgrowth, not good, right? Not only can you get more symptoms of acid reflux, which is annoying because you feel it, but it can cause lots of downstream problems. We mentioned the hiatal hernia issue before, which is basically some of your stomach actually sort of pooches out and above into the esophagus, so you're getting a free pathway to have reflux, and that can be easily fixed. Both there's things you can do non-surgically, and of course there's a surgical fix for that as well. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but there's different options. It's not just a one-size-fits-all type of thing. So other things to consider at the outset, if you're having what you think is heartburn, like I said before, please get it checked out, because it may or may not be heartburn. It may feel like heartburn, but it could be something else. It could be actually anything from gallbladder disease to it could be a sign of heart disease or heart attack and things like that. So you want to get it checked out just to make sure you know what you're dealing with. But I see commonly, especially in young people that aren't really at risk for heart disease, I see symptoms that initially sound like, maybe a reflux or heartburn type of thing, but it actually is more of a referred pain from the right upper quadrant here, which is where the gallbladder lies, and it can be confused with gallbladder issues. As many of you know, the gallbladder is located in the upper part of the stomach. It's on the right side there with the liver, kind of just in the in that sort of right upper under the rib cage, right upper quadrant area. That's where it lies, and it's important, right? There's a reason we all have gallbladders. The surgeons might tell you differently. They might say, oh, let's just get rid of it because you're maybe having symptoms related to gallbladder problems, so let's just get rid of the gallbladder. Well, I would say as a last resort, yes, that's an option, but why would you want to surgically remove something that was put there for a reason? And it's there for a reason. It's supposed to be there. It stores the bile acids and bile salts, which help you to digest your food, especially the fats, which, as I've mentioned, the healthy fats that I love, things like avocado, coconut oil, steak, fatty fishes, salmon, ahi, tuna. All these things need the enzymes and bile acids, bile salts that are located in the bile, which are stored in the gallbladder, which are then released with eating. So if you don't have a gallbladder, it's going to be hard for you to eat all these amazing foods that are good for your body, because you're going to have symptoms, you're not going to absorb it well. And so if you do still want to eat these kind of foods and your gallbladder is out, don't worry. There's also things you can do. There's supplements that you can take that are basically bile acids, bile salts, lipase, things to help you digest these foods, which are still good for you. But it can be definitely more problematic if you don't have a gallbladder. So If you're considering having your gallbladder removed or not, I would say put it at the bottom of the list as far as things to be removed. Try to keep it. Try to keep your gallbladder. It's there for a reason. Try to keep it. If you've already had it removed, don't dismay. Don't be totally bummed, because there are still things you can do to be able to enjoy some foods that'll be good for you and healthy, and through adding some enzymes and things to your diet to help you digest these. So it's not the end of the world, but if you have not had yours removed and you're being told to have it removed, just think about all the options, consider all the options. Obviously, please discuss it with your healthcare provider. One thing I found, you may want to just try to figure out, do I have, acid problems or not? Do I need to get tested for it? Well, in medical school, we learned that the gold standard, is you drop this pH probe through your either mouth or nose, usually the nose, because then you can still swallow and stuff easily and it's not gagging you, all the way down into the stomach. It's a pH probe. Like, we used to do this, on a lot of people, especially little babies and stuff, to check and see if they had reflux. It was pretty hardcore. And it's basically, it's sensing the pH down there. And instead of doing that painful, invasive test or getting an endoscopy to actually take samples and things, you can do sort of the poor man's test, sort of like I like to describe for you guys some things you can do at home that will give you information that are practical. And this one, I found it on Dr. Mercola's website. I think he's a great guy. He's a physician like me that's done even more years in both medicine, holistic medicine. He's older than I am, and he's got tons of experience. Good guy. He's got a cool website. I found this on there about how to sort of help determine if you have acid problems or not. And this is a simple test. We can all do it if we have water. Most of us have that at home. And baking soda. Most of us also have that for one reason or another. So this is what you do. You take 1 teaspoon of baking soda. You mix it with 8 ounces of water. And when you first get up in the morning, before you eat anything, you mix this up really good. 1 teaspoon, 8 ounces of water. Mix it up real well. Just chug it. Gulp it down. Okay? And your response to this will help you to understand if your acid levels are normal, if they're low, or if they're high. So typically what happens is this baking soda is going to combine with the hydrochloric acid in your stomach, right? Kind of neutralize it, and you should get some bubbles. This is CO2 or carbon dioxide bubbles, and it should make you belch. If you got normal acid levels and whatnot, it should make you belch. And the timing, as far as how long it takes for you to belch, this will be helpful to try to determine what your acid levels are like. So if you belch within about 2 or 3 minutes, that's pretty normal, okay? 2 or 3 minutes. If you belch much, much earlier than 2 minutes, like you belch at 30 seconds, or the repeated belching is just going crazy and you can't stop, it's way too much, you may actually have an excess of acid, which is, believe it or not, it's actually not as common as people think. And if you don't belch at all, or you belch after maybe about 5 minutes, then you probably don't have enough acid, right? So simple tests. I'll put a little link to that on Dr. Mercola's site. It's kind of a cool little test that you can do. Take time to figure out if this is something you may have issues with your stomach acid. You can do that quick test with water and baking soda, so it's not hard. And there's also additional testing that you can do looking in stool samples to determine if you could have some enzyme issues, hydrochloric acid deficiencies. You can also do cultures of your stool to see about the flora that you have and if it's diverse enough and all this kind of thing. That's additional testing that we don't have time to talk about. But as I mentioned at the outset, because this is so common to have reflux or heartburn or GERD or gastritis, so many of us, 1/5 of us have it at least once a month, and most of us have it, almost 100% of us at some point in our lives. And many of us either take over-the-counter or are prescribed medications for this. I want to talk a little bit about these medications, about some problems with them, and then sort of round it off with some natural and not only natural remedies and things, but dietary as well as behavioral components that we can do. We can make the change. We can treat this without necessarily taking a prescription or over-the-counter medication. So over the years, the most common medications out there prescribed are things that are either blocking that proton pump called the PPI or the proton pump inhibitor. Those are things like Prevacid, Protonix. Those are the common ones that are out there. Many, many others. Anything that ends in azole, like pantoprazole, omeprazole. These are the common ones out there. There's over-the-counter ones, like I said, like Prilosec, OTC. Those are often prescribed. And as I mentioned before, these weren't initially supposed to be prescribed so readily and commonly for simple problems like reflux. They were specifically designed for that Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, which is super rare. And so we'll get into this a little bit more. And then there's the other more available H2 blockers, Tagamet, Zantac, Pepcid, things like that. And those have been available over the counter for years and years. In fact, a few of them recently have been removed. Some of my favorites, not for myself personally, but I have, reached for those acutely, in the ER setting to help people feel better. And some of them have actually been taken off the market because of some contaminants in there. So anyway, if you have the choice, try to go natural, right? Because there are issues with a lot of these medications. PPIs I'll talk about a bit because they're so stinking common. The proton pump inhibitors, these are like I mentioned, the Prilosec, Prevacid, Protonix, they're over-the-counter, Prilosec, OTC, etc. There's many, many studies that says, guess what? That they're overprescribed. Well, yeah, they're overprescribed. And they can actually have lots of side effects, especially if they're used often, daily, or for weeks and months at a time. And most physicians out there don't either know this, don't appreciate this. They think they're just benign because, hey, it's just for stomach acid, whatever. Well, have you guys ever seen on television when they, have some commercial for a medication, say it's something for arthritis or whatever, maybe it's either rheumatoid or, there's all these psoriatic arthritis conditions, or just for psoriasis, the rash. There's like all these medicines that are out there, that are advertised on TV. And at the end, the last like 30 seconds, the guy or gal starts speaking 100 miles an hour with like hundreds of side effects, including crazy stuff like severe infections, sepsis, death, heart attack, stroke. They're naming off these things at the end and they're like, counsel with your doctor, ask your doctor about this medication. It's like, holy moly, all these side effects. Do I really want that? And basically every medication out there has lots of side effects. And I'll get off this soapbox real quick, but basically you just want to be advised. You want to understand that everything has consequence, right? I mean, even Newton said this way back when, there's going to be anytime you have a law of either science, medicine, physics, whatever, there's going to be a reaction, equal and opposite reaction, right? Newton's law. And all these medicines have side effects. So you might want to know a little bit about them. Some of them from the PPIs in particular that's been more recently talked about is chronic use of them can cause everything from kidney issues, your creatinine could go up, you could have some kidney problems. They can cause pneumonias, osteoporosis, hip fractures, dementia, increase your risk for heart disease, heart attack, stroke, premature death, all these crazy things just from a proton pump inhibitor. Like, it's available over the counter, Prilosec OTC, right? It's over the counter, but if you're using it every single day, not awesome, not awesome. We actually want to have the appropriate amounts of stomach acid there so that we can have a good, healthy gut flora so we don't have all these chronic problems and bacterial overgrowth and things like that. And one of the things that's super common, and I even talked about it on my podcast with Dr. Ben Bickman, a lot of the medications, including PPIs and antacids and H2 blockers, can cause increased insulin resistance and can lead to diabetes. This is in his book, Why We Get Sick. Check it out if you haven't already. Listen to the podcast with Ben Bickman that I did a few weeks back. There was a big study done fairly recently. I guess they used a bunch of data from 204,000 people. They were enrolled in different studies, including the Nurses' Health Study, which they've taken a lot of information from over the years because we have such a large group of people, a large cohort, and they found that there were 10,000 cases of diabetes associated with the use of chronic PPIs. In fact, they said about 24% increased risk of getting diabetes in the group that use PPIs. And I'm not saying that this is absolute and causal. This is observational, and this is related. They can see that it was associated with. It's not necessarily causal, but it certainly makes you ask the question, right? It begs the question, so to speak. The researchers found that the regular use of PPIs raised an individual's risk for type 2 diabetes, and this grew, big surprise, with the length of time that you took the medication. So the more you used it, the more potential long-term issues. There's also issues with these medications that alter our pH in our stomach. They can change, big surprise, once again, the gut microbiome. This can also increase the chances of insulin resistance, as well as diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Generally speaking, there was a study of about 2,000 healthy twins, and the researchers found that PPI use was associated with a lower number of healthy gut flora, as well as a lower diversity, which led them to having more insulin resistance and potentially diabetes in the future. Also, because of this lower diversity, lower good flora, it led to bacterial overgrowth. A different study showed how this can be linked to development of bacterial overgrowth, including that crazy, nasty C. diff problem that you've heard about that kills many people annually, and it's because of an overgrowth of this nasty bacteria, Clostridium difficile, which is taken over due to problems with your overall gut health, so to speak. So these can be increased incidence of this C. diff infection, as well as many enteric infections from chronic overuse of these antacids and PPIs used to treat, the heartburn we started out with. So additionally, another study showed that these medications can increase the risk of weight gain. Who wants that, right? We talked about diabetes, liver disease, the metabolic syndrome, and this is not a good thing. So medications are not benign. They're not necessarily the enemy. There's lots of medications that can be used for specific things when we need them, but I'm sort of a less is more kind of guy. I try to seek things out first, naturally, and medications if you really need to. From MedPage today says, quote, at a population level, the PPIs have even a more pronounced effect on the gut microbiome than other commonly used drugs, including antibiotics. And this should lead to warnings of overuse of them and calls for further investigation into the sequelae or the future and long-term effects of the PPI use. So there's problems out there. I mentioned this a little bit ago, that these other medicines, besides just the PPIs, things like Zantac and others, have been contaminated, right? Zantac was my favorite, not for me in particular, but it just works quickly. You know, if you take a PPI, it's not going to take your heartburn away in that instant. So in the ER, you're coming in with heartburn, and it's pretty certain that's what it is. If I give you one of these PPIs, it ain't going to take it away immediately. Some of these other ones, like the H2 blockers, they can work more quickly, and so I would reach for those to treat people in the acute setting, but problematically, some of them have even been removed from the market because of contamination with something that was used for the commercial production of rocket fuel. Like, what? Rocket fuel in Zantac? This is NDMA, N-nitrosodium methylamine. I'm not going to say that again, but NDMA was found in Zantac. So that's why I was taken off the market. Total bummer to people that need something to reach for quickly to take it away, the heartburn symptoms, but it's problematic, so we should probably avoid it. That's also been found in other medications, and unfortunately our FDA is probably not as good at recognizing this and issuing warnings as they should, because that's been found in blood pressure medications, and they've found a lot of issues with quality of medications. And you know what I like to say? We should just get to the root of the problem and not just reach for the Band-Aid approach, because the issues with all these medications are myriad and many. Besides the bacterial overgrowth that I have spoken of a couple of times, having problems with the numbers of good and bad gut flora, but also it can lead to malabsorption of nutrients that we really want. For example, they can reduce the absorption of magnesium, one of my favorite minerals, which many of us are deficient, and it could be because you might be on one of these antacids, because it decreases the absorption of magnesium. Also, it can decrease, besides magnesium, you can have other nutrients that are not absorbed as well. Magnesium in and of itself, I talked about this in a whole entire podcast, but if you have low magnesium, you can be tired, have fatigue, nausea. You can have heart rhythm problems. You can have low energy, all kinds of stuff. It's not good. Magnesium's awesome. Also, low levels can lead to headaches, muscle problems, all kinds of stuff. But this is not all, right? If we mess with our stomach acid and we reduce it to the point where we're not absorbing the things that we need to be absorbing, we can also not only not have appropriate magnesium, but it also reduces the amount of calcium absorption, which is probably why long-term use of the antacids can lead to osteoporosis, right? Because we need the calcium for strong bones. And if we don't have the strong bones, we can have osteoporosis, which is the weaker bones, which can basically cause premature fractures, right? Hip fractures, other fractures, humerus fractures. These are things I see almost daily in the ER from osteoporosis, which could be contributed to by long-term use of a simple heartburn medicine. Like, who knew, right? Who knew? Other issues, as described in a recent Journal of the American Medical Association article, or JAMA, were increasing incidence of chronic kidney disease from people using these antacid medications. Up to 70% of the prescriptions they found in this study from Brisbane, Australia, said that 70% of these prescriptions for PPIs are used without appropriate indication. And 25% of people on these long-term could actually discontinue them without developing significant symptoms. So we need to be more aware, I guess, of the potential side effects. Others down the road, like I mentioned, problems with H. pylori, problems with chronic use of these things can also increase your risk of stomach cancer. This actually doubles when you take PPIs chronically. Researchers found that this increase in stomach cancer for those that had taken the PPIs every day had even more than that, had a 4.5 time increase in the risk than those that just took them once a week. So on average, it doubled your risk. If you took them every day, you were 4.5 times more likely to have stomach cancer. This is nutty. This is nutty. So each of these things are problematic, potentially, especially if you take them long term. So now let's get away from just talking about the side effects, bad things about long-term use of these antacid medicines, but let's talk about things that we can do, some more natural ways to heal this common issue that 1 in 5 of us have every single month. And research has shown that we can have things in our diet that can help, like sauerkraut, or in Hawaiian kimchi, right? Because it has natural microbiome enhancers and probiotics, right? And this has been shown to help stimulate your body to produce appropriate amounts of stomach acid. Also, fermented juices from these food items like sauerkraut and kimchi. If you have a little bit of this before your meal, it can help naturally balance your gut. It can help you improve digestion. So if you don't love kimchi, you don't love sauerkraut, just take a little bit. I mean, you don't have to like eat tons of it. I buy like a big thing of the kimchi and it's in my fridge for a couple of weeks because I can't eat giant quantities, but I take a couple of bites of it. I try to do it with a lot of my meals because of this enhancing effect of appropriate levels of stomach acid. So that's what I get. Kimchi, sauerkraut lovers out there, tell me where you get that. But there's other natural ways to help, including with taking probiotics, and that will help have basically a more restorative function on your normal gut microbiome or your gut flora. But fermented foods are pretty helpful here, as mentioned, as well as high-quality probiotics. If you want to know more about the probiotics that I personally take, you can message me, email me. We can talk about that. But basically, you want to have a healthy gut flora. We want to take things that enhance the flora that's good and don't cause overpopulation of the bad. And that can easily happen if we take lots of antacids that are either over-the-counter or prescription, because they can increase the bad microbiome there. We also need to be aware that certain foods, especially those containing lectins, lectins are a whole hour-long podcast in and of themselves, but legumes or beans and some grains, have high levels of lectins, which are potent enzyme inhibitors, and they can actually mess with the normal function of your digestive system as well, and they can actually exacerbate and increase heartburn. So be a little cautious with legumes, and if you eat them, make sure that they're well cooked for a long period of time and that you're not eating them too often or too much of them, because they can have potential issues. And if you happen to be on, one of these antacids or PPIs, it's probably important to not stop at cold turkey. You might have to kind of wean off of it. You might even wean off of a PPI for a couple of weeks, and then when you come off, replace it with a H2 blocker like Pepcid, and then wean off of that. Because some people, if they just cold turkey quit them, you might just have worsening symptoms, but you might not. So up to you. Do this with your healthcare provider. Talk about how to potentially get off any of these chronic medicines that you are taking, or use the lowest possible dose, because they're not good. They're not good long term. There's in addition to these, probiotic enriched foods that we can eat, like the fermented food, sauerkraut, kimchi, certain yogurts and things, kefir and things, as well as probiotic supplements, all help. But also we need to take our time when we eat. And I'm going to discuss some behavioral things. If we're just like wolfing down our food and then moving right to the next thing, that can increase our risks of having heartburn. We want to give our stomachs time to digest the food that we're eating. And so a super fast, hurried 5-minute meal may not be awesome. Certain foods we may want to just avoid altogether. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, but things that have a lot of caffeine in them, certainly alcohol, real acidic foods, certain teas, chocolate, mint, these things can increase the issues with the heartburn. But you don't have to necessarily eliminate them completely from your diet, but definitely in moderation. Don't overdo it. Watch out for carbonated beverages. I don't drink a lot of carbonated beverages because most carbonated beverages aren't awesome for you, right? Most of them are things like soda and whatnot, and they're just not awesome in general. But if you do drink carbonation, just don't do it with every meal. Try to, decrease the consumption of it, because these can increase your chances of having heartburn. After you do eat, don't lay down and try to go to sleep right away. Don't eat late meals. The sort of rule of thumb is 3 hours after eating your last meal. Then you can lay down and go to bed for the night or whatever. You don't want to eat close to bedtime. Remember, no snacking at night. This messes with the whole process that we've talked about with insulin resistance with Dr. Bickman. The intermittent fasting I've talked about previously. This messes with that. So try not to eat close to bedtime. Try to have at least 3 hours of no food before bedtime. That's kind of the basics. No late night snacks. We talked about that. And don't, eat a full meal and then exercise immediately. Having a more gentle sort of, what I like to do after dinner is go for a little walk. Me and my wife have this tradition where we go for a little walk. We kind of do dinner, all our usual evening family routine stuff, reading together as a family, praying, time with our kids, bedtime stories, all this kind of stuff. And then once all the dust settles with everything, we do some laps around our house. We can go out and walk and just kind of have a mellow evening stroll. We like to do a mellow stroll after dinner. We sort of picked this up when we were in Italy more than a decade ago. We noticed that basically all the Italians there, in general, they're just like super healthy people, partly because of the amazing Mediterranean diet that most of them eat, which is full of some fatty foods and things, but it's good, high-quality fatty foods, the saturated natural fats. And then they all move. Like, these guys walk everywhere. They're just always walking. And so we try to go for a walk. We're not like running, pushing it hard, but we're just walking. Go for a walk after our meals, especially dinner. Another thing that may help is if you need to lose a little weight. Sometimes if we're overweight, this can cause more reflux issues just because it increases the girth and the pressure just pushing up on that stomach, which can make us reflux. If we smoke, obviously, please quit. There's a 1-800-QUIT-NOW number that's super, it's free, it's available, useful, and you can get help, even nicotine patches and things for free. 1-800-QUIT-NOW. Definitely smoking is not good for reflux, and it's not good for your health. I can't think of any good thing that comes from that. So if you smoke, quit. And then just look at all the different medications that you may take, because some of them can cause issues with increasing reflux and heartburn and things. So there's a whole list of them. I don't want to read all 30 of them, but at the end of the day, there's so many natural ways we can help control this ourselves. It's within us. Those last 10 or 15 things that I just mentioned, like, that's easy stuff. It's not super hard. Just don't eat a late meal. Go for a little stroll after eating. Minimize certain types of food and beverage consumption. Have some nice kimchi or sauerkraut or kefir or whatever, or take probiotic supplements, and avoiding some of these other things that we talked about, both, ongoing chronic medications for heartburn, as well as, some of the other medicines we may be on can contribute to it. So talk them over with your healthcare provider. Know that there is so much that you can do about this, which is, I love that. The ball is in our proverbial court. So get it done. See your provider. Look at your medications. See if some of them can be eliminated. And do these behavioral things, because it's not that hard. And they can be hugely helpful. So love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Oh my gosh, it's just a pleasure to share these things with you. They've been helpful to me because I've had heartburn a number of times. Pretty stinking bad. In fact, one time years and years ago, I had it so bad, I can't even remember what the stinking thing I ate was, but it was at night, that I got it. It was severe. I mean, I thought, shoots, could I be having some crazy issue like a heart attack, a blood clot in my pulmonary artery, a pulmonary embolus, a thoracic dissection, all these crazy things. And I did what I should have done, and I didn't just self-diagnose. I actually went to the hospital, got checked out, and at the end of the day, it just ended up being heartburn, thank goodness. But it can be bad. It can be painful. It can be super annoying, and it can be frequent in our lives. And so know that there is a lot that you can do about it. A lot of it is within your control, both in your diet, in what you choose to supplement with, as well as medications that may be causing and contributing to it. Lifestyle practices that may need to be modified or changed so that you can have less of it, because nobody wants to have this on a regular basis. It sucks. So you can do this. The ball is in your court. You can be healthier, better, stronger, faster, all those things. And it is possible. It is possible. Love you guys. Aloha.